Hey, we're Saints Father Chris here. Welcome to our Crucifixional live stream. Glad to have you beautiful people with us. We missed you last week, and as Greg said yesterday, Christ is risen. For those who are Orthodox Christians, we are still in the Paschal season, we say. Christ is risen. I hope everyone had a great restful week last week. I know we sure did. We didn't we didn't do much but rest. We had things, but we rested good. Glad to be back at it. Now, what was great about what Greg talked about yesterday was the idea of doubting Thomas. I know we use that common colloquial term, and he said something that triggered in my mind. I was like, yeah, that's really awesome, right? Like, one of the things that we say, just kind of generically is that if you want to insult somebody, you have an agenda, right? Like, I can't believe you have an agenda. Or we go after politicians, so they have this terrible political agenda, right? I mean, we use that word agenda as a negative insult, trying to kind of keep people down a little bit. And I think about the word agenda. Why would you not have an agenda, right? Like, if you're going to go to a meeting, which you would be wise to do, to go to a meeting, but you would be wise to have an agenda. You got to have a plan. Where are you going? What's this meeting about? Is it just a free-for-all? Then you don't need an agenda. But if you want to accomplish something, if you want to make a statement, you got to have an agenda, right? I mean, that's just how an agenda works. Writers, authors also have agenda. Agendas, the plural. They have agendas. Agendi, because they want to say something, right? Like, look, I wrote a book, right? My first one here. I had an agenda. I had a very specific idea that I wanted to put out in the world. I wanted people to understand things the way, they don't have to agree with them, but at least understand how I was thinking. My goal was to get people to hear my thought about the easy life is fallacious and that we have to be warrior saints to overcome it, right? Like, that was my agenda. Think about what's her name? The Harry Potter, Rowling's, right? She had a very clear agenda. I mean, she was trying to make a statement about good versus evil, or light versus darkness, and children, how they could overcome, all of the dark and evil through their friendships and so on. I mean, she had a very specific purpose, agenda in her story. It's not a scandalous thing, right? And then, with all of that in mind, hopefully I'm making the case that you should have an agenda. There can be evil agendas, for sure, but if the agenda is good, why do we have to castigate that, right? And all of my rambling comes back to this point. The gospel that Greg was talking about yesterday, John chapter 20, with the story of doubting Thomas. At the end of the whole section, John tells the story of Jesus appearing to the disciples. Thomas doesn't believe, places his hand in his side 8 days later, my Lord and my God. The last verses, 30 and 31 of this chapter, say the following. Now Jesus did many other signs which are not written in this book, but these are written that you would believe that Jesus is the Christ, and that believing you have life in his name. Think about that. What's John saying? He's telling us, look, Jesus did all kinds of other stuff. I didn't write it all down. I chose to write these specific things down, his teachings and some actions and some miracles, and of course his cross and empty tomb. I wrote those things. I chose those things to write down so that you would believe, and that believing you would have life, right? That's a pretty clear agenda. I mean, John is telling you, I have a purpose in writing this gospel. I want you to hear all this about the Lord, believe, so that you might have life, right? Like, having an agenda, a purpose there is not a bad thing. Very important for us to remember that the evangelists, they wrote with a purpose, man. They wanted to get the word out so that other people would believe. All of this leads us to really this, I don't even know how to say it, but just it's a beautiful thing once we come to accept that we are hearing these texts, hoping to learn them, to follow them, so that by doing so we have life. Does that make sense? I mean, it's a glorious message. It is not evil, as some may say. It's not a wicked agenda. It's a beautiful agenda. An agenda nonetheless, but it's beautiful. Don't, brothers and sisters, ever be afraid of that. Which is interesting, at least to me, because that's what I'm going to talk about tomorrow. When people throw things like, epithets? Epithets? When they throw them at you to try to keep you down, like you have an agenda, right? Why are we so afraid of accepting that? I accept that the Gospel of John has a clear agenda, but the agenda is one unto life. Anyways, I'm rambling at this point, but I love you. It's been too long. Glad to be back. We will be back tomorrow to talk about how to deal with those epithets. Epithets, whatever the word is, EPI, thet. I'm crazy. I love you. Christ is risen. Hope it's great. We'll see you tomorrow. As always, keep walking on the way of the Word of Saint.